Welcome back to the series with WooCommerce and React. In this video, I'm going to cover the shop page, and at the same time, as you can see, when I click on add to cart, my cart is getting filled up, and also at the same time, if I hit add more, the number increases. So let's see how the shopping cart looks like. In the same video, I'm also going to cover the cart page and its functionality. For example, adding more quantity, subtracting quantity, and deleting item and clearing the cart. So now that you have learned the functionality, let's go back to the code and see how it is done. All right, we are back at the code, and this is our shop page, right? So let's take a look from the top down. Up here, we're importing use context hook from React because we're going to be using this product context to get the data, and then the usual layout components, the page, content, and the stuff that's I'm bringing in from React Bootstrap, and then of course the product context, which we went over in detail in the last video, and we will do the same here also, just as a recap. And then the product component, we'll also go over that. And then we have the React loader spinner, and then we have a helper library from JavaScript, Lodash, and React Masonry CSS, which is basically giving me this layout, the masonry layout. And of course, Animate.css, which gives us the animations, and ShopPage.css brings in the sass that I need to style my page. And this also has some custom CSS that is provided by the Masonry CSS. And if you want to take a look at those libraries, let me give you a quick glimpse here. React Bootstrap, you can get all the necessary code help from here. And then the loader spinner, it has very good documentation. Also the Masonry CSS, these are all npm modules. You just bring them in and follow the direction here. And this is the Lodash library. This is where you get all the custom functions that, the helper functions from vanilla JavaScript. And the Animate CSS, let's see. Okay, so this is the one. This has all the code and help necessary to create your animations. All right, that being said, let's go back to the code. All right, so let's see what this page is all about. So at the very beginning, we're starting with a functional component, and we're bringing the product context data, the products and is pending. And let's go take a quick look at what that's looking like. There you go. This is where I'm bringing in get data from HTTP service and all the necessary hooks, create context, use state, and use effect from React. And then declaring some variables, products, features, is pending. And as you know, is pending is used so that we can have our loading spinner coming on and go. For example, right here, if I do a refresh, while it's waiting to get the data, we see that loading spinner visible, right? And then as soon as the data is received, we change the variable value to false and it goes away. All right, so now let's go back to the code. Okay, so as we see here, at the very beginning inside the use effect, before calling in the data using get data, which we collected from the HTTP service, we are setting this is pending true. So as soon as this is true, our loading spinner shows, and in the end, once we collected the data, we're filling up all these variables, our product, featured, and also at the same time set is pending to false. And that's when the loading spinner goes away. And at the same time, we are uploading the data to our variables here, products, featured, and passing them to the children via this context provider. So now let's go back to our shop page. So now we know where this data is coming from. And in here, I'm declaring another variable, breakpoint columns object, which is basically a recommended variable for the Masonry CSS. And this way, I'm just declaring the breaking points. You can change them, any way you like. So I'm just setting them like default to 2 column, and then 1500, 1100, and 700. It's up to you how you want to do yours, and this is the way I'm getting these 2 columns. Even when I make it large, it remains 2 column, right? Okay, now let's go back. All right. So in here, first I'm declaring a variable called product items, and this is where I am mapping through all the products that I just collected from the context and filtering them through. Basically at the beginning, I'm just picking up the products that had category featured, and then I'm using a Lodash function .map to create a smaller array of the name featured. And in here, in that array, I'm just taking the feature and matching it. Basically, I'm saying that if there is, just give me the ones that does not have this category featured. And just to show you a little bit detail, let me just enable these console logs, save it. Now let's go and look. This is what's happening. Basically, it's going through all the products and collecting the ones with featured, right? And so far we know we have only 3 of them. And as soon as it collects that, and then the next one just collecting this name so that I can compare, right? Just the category name. And thus, through this loop, I'm only showing the products that do not belong to the featured category. And as per the product component, let's go take a quick look as we have discussed this before in the last video. And this is what the product looks like. In here, once again, I'm using the cart context, but I'm not gonna go over the details just yet. We're going to talk about the cart stuff when we cover the cart page, but other than that, you can see it has just the basic the layout component, the card and button from React Bootstrap, and here's a function is in cart, which is pretty much checking if the current product is in cart or not. And since this component, we are actually sending the single products like that as a prop. So in here, we just easily put that all that information inside the cart component and pulling the data in, for example, the link for each product to the single page product.id. For example, right here, like if I want to go to the single page, and right here product, and gives us the ID, and the rest is product image, product name, and also these add product, add more, these stuff coming from the cart context, so we'll go over them later. But in here, as per the in cart function goes, so if it returns true, which means the content is added to the cart, for example, right here, see this is the cart, and then when the in cart component returns false, that means we'll see this cart, right? Add to cart button. And then we hit this, and this same item gets added, and this button changed to add more. And that's exactly what's happening. So if the product does not contain, we see add to cart, but if it does, it changes itself to add more. And that's all the product component is all about. So now let's go back to shop page. So once this product items got created, and basically using the, let me just disable this for a second, save it. All right, so basically what we're getting here, product items, are the products that are not featured, right? Because as you can see here we get all the products, but in the home page we are already showing the featured products. So in the shop we don't want them repeating, right? And that's exactly why we're filtering them. I know I could have done it easily by making another call to the WooCommerce, right, using the HTTP service, but that will slow me down, right? When we already have our products in the context, right, which means in the memory already. So it's easier and much faster to just loop through those products and filter them and get the non-featured products, right? And that's exactly how and why I did this. And once that is done, the rest is simple. It's the page and content, the layout items, layout components are giving me my page some structure. And in here, I'm using that is pending variable, which I collected up here, right there from the context, product context. And what I'm doing here is, like, if this is true, then show that puff, which is basically this React loading spinner icon, right? So, but if as soon as it becomes true, it goes away and gives us the data, and this data is the product items, but it is wrapped around with Masonry. This is the Masonry CSS, and that's how to use it. But for the details, you can always visit their npm library page. There's a lot of help in there. And this is where also I'm using that breaking point variable, this guy right here, and that gives me the columns and like basically the making it responsive, right? So that being said, that's I think that's all there is to know about the shopping page. Just one more time, let's look at the shop page CSS. This is some custom CSS I added, and these are the guys who were given to me by that Masonry layout, even though I made some changes, but feel free to experiment yourself. And this gives us the rundown on the shop page. Next, let's cover the cart, or the cart page, and all its functionalities. All right, so this is the cart page, and this is where we get to add quantity, subtract quantity, delete product, and also clear the whole thing out. These are pretty much the functionality, and as soon as we change these numbers also keep changing. So now let's go to the code and see what's up. Okay, now this page has two other components. This is the main one, the cart page, and then cart item and cart total, and all these components make the whole page. Now before I get into the details of this code, I would like to get you familiarized with this cart context and this cart reducer right here. Now I'm gonna warn you a little bit. This is not a basic course, so this may be a little bit more complex to understand, but stick with me. I will walk you through them. Once we go over this, it will make it a lot simpler to understand the breakdown of the page. this cart page right here and all these elements, right? So fasten your seatbelt, guys. Let's get started. All right, so let's go over this cart context first. At the top, we're bringing in the create context and use reducer hooks from React, because we're going to be using cart context and cart reducer here. So at the very beginning, we create this variable and export it as cart context, and we use create context. And before I get into this detail, let me just show you the structure of the context page. So basically, once we create that, the next thing we do is provider function, the cart context, and we give it the children as a prop, which is a default prop for pretty much all components in React. And then once we finish it, we return the provider cart context and wrap it around the children. And in the end, we export default the cart context provider, the whole thing, right? And to get a clearer picture how this is actually helping everybody, we have to go to the index.js page. And in here, you can see I'm bringing in cart context provider, that our default export, and then we're wrapping it around the main app component, which is the mother of all other pages and components, right? And this is how our cart context provider is providing the data to all its children, right? So that's the main structure. So now let's go back to the cart context. All right. So then just to begin with, we actually check up on the local storage called cart. And this is because to persist the data, the cart data, right? Because in here, you see all the data nice, right? No problem. But as soon as if we had just inside variables, right? Then if you refresh the page, they would go away. But in here, they're persisting because we are persisting them in here. Let's say if we go to application, there you go. Local storage, and this is my app. And in here, all the cart components or called cart items are saved right here. Look at this, 3, 3, right? So this is how we're persisting it. So as soon as I move forward with it a little bit deeper into the code, you'll see how we are persisting it. But at the very beginning, we just check up on that cart item. If something is available, that's where we start. And using that, we create this initial state. And we also add another component to that initial state, which is some items. And we throw in all the cart storage items in there. So now to figure out what's happening here in the cart item, some items, let's go back into the reducer. All right. So in here, before I get into further detail of these, let's just check up on this some items function. So what's happening here is as soon as somebody clicks on the add to cart, this one gets into action at the very beginning. And as you can see here, the cart items from the local storage were sent. And in here, it just gets the cart item, and first thing it does is stores cart items, calls this function, store cart items, and send them here so that we can add them in the local storage as cart. Just as you saw the local storage item, right? This is where it's being added. And then what it's returning is total count of the items and the prices. And to do that, I'm using the reducer function from vanilla JavaScript. It has nothing to do with React. If you want to find out more about it, there's tons and tons of material out there on YouTube and on Google. So please feel free to check up on those. but I'm not going to go into much detail here. But this is what I'm doing here, and I'm returning the total cart items and total price from here. So let's go back to context, and actually to show you quickly, in here I actually did some console logs, and this is the cart items, and this is the total 48, this one coming from that reducer, and the item count 6 right here, right? So this is what the reducer function is doing. So with this initial state, we go in, and first thing we do, use the use reducer hook and throw in that cart reducer, right, which is this guy. This is the main export from this file, and this has all the necessary functions which we will go over very quickly, and then export default cart reducer, right? So in here we just throw in that cart reducer and the initial state and collect the main state and the dispatch. Now the thing about dispatch is it's nothing but a string which actually tells you the type of action that reducer needs to take. Like for example, with all these, add item, add more, add less, remove item, etc., clear, all these are simple text actions that we send to the reducer, and with the payload of product. Each of them will take a single product, and this will get clearer once we go over the cart page construction. Trust me on this. So for now, just think this is a one product object, which is pretty much like these guys. Each of them has all the product information, right? 1, 2, 3, right? All these. So once we give them the payload and tell them what to do, add items. So let's see what the reducer is doing. All right. So first thing it is doing, it's checking on the action type. There's a switch case here. So as soon as it gets an action.type would be our add item text, and our action also brings in the payload, action.payload, which is basically the product payload. And in here, all it's doing is checking through all the cart items for that specific product's ID. If it doesn't find it, it just pushes it into the payload and add quantity 1. That's all it's doing. The first time you add a product, this is what gets into action. And then it returns the state, which has all the information of the product, the cart items, and the sum items, which is pretty much the cart total, cart item total, and price total, right? And this is the state, and this is the return data cycles through all the children via the cart context, right? And next, you see when here is the add more, right? So once we add the first item to cart, let's go back to the shop. Let's say this one hasn't been added, right? So we just add this. Now at this time the add item gets into action, but next time, like once you want to add more quantities, you add more, adds more items here, and that's when this add more gets into action. Also, like in here, if we click on this plus sign, this is also the function of add more. So now let's go see what this add more doing. The reducer, here's add more. This is the action type, and all it's doing is looking for the index of the new product. Is going out there and find the index of that brand new product that got in, and if it finds it, that means the product already exists. So it goes out there and adds one extra quantity to that specific product, specific item, right? So basically this item is already present, so if I click plus, it will only add to this one, right? And also it's going to start adding to the total items and total cost using this sum item. And the same way the add less is doing the exact same thing, only thing it's doing is subtracting it, because this quantity minus minus is taking out products like this. It's like it has 4 minus minus, and as you can see is doing exact opposite and returning the same set of data items, state, cart, and the totals. And then comes the remove item. Same way, it is also coming with a product payload, which is single product, and all it's doing is filtering it, checking up on the ID. If the product is present, then it's returning all items except for that clicked item. As you can see, it's not equal to the payload.id. So that way, what's happening is, as soon as I click this trash button, whole product goes away. It's only returning the ones that ID did not match, right? If ID matched, it just make the item disappear. The same way, the clear one is basically returning a reset of all the data points, and at the same time, it is removing it from that local storage cart, right? So in here, as soon as I hit clear, everything goes away. Even the local storage is cleared. See, it becomes 0, and thus all these players are in action. So now the context is basically creating the function and calling the reducer by this method, this dispatch, where it is sending you the action types and the payload, and reducer is doing the rest. And this way, these functions are filling up with the results. And at this point, once everything's said and done, we're just putting the whole state in there and all the functions we just declared using reducer into this one variable value, context values. And while we're returning the provider, we are throwing that value in there and wrapping it around all children. And this children could be app, our main app component, which is the mother of all the other children's, right? And that's how all the data is trickling down. Once again, a quick look to the index.js. See here, we're bringing in the cart context provider and wrapping it around the app and sending data to all the children. That being said, next, let's look at our cart page and all its components. All right, guys, so this is the cart page in action. Now let's go find out what the code looks like. So in here, we have two different components. So first, we're gonna look into the main component, which is the cart page. And at the very beginning, we're using bringing in the use context hook, because we're going to be using the cart context here. And these guys are just the layout components, page content, and the React Bootstrap stuff. And in here, I'm bringing in the cart context right from here, and the other two components, the cart item and cart total. Let me just show you. See, in here, I just divided this page into two parts, two columns here, and this part is the cart items and this is the total, right? I separated them into two different components, and that's all this is about, these two items. So once we get in, first thing we do is bring in all the necessary data from cart context. As we saw before, all these functions, add more, add less, remove product, item count, remove product, and clear cart. So these are all the functions right here. And now the question is, where is this item count and total coming from? They are actually coming from this state here. Remember the initial state we had this cart items and sum items, and in the sum items inside the reducer we are returning item counts and total, and this is where this item count and total coming from, in here. So now we have all the necessary data we need, and I am console logging them right here also, the cart items, totals, and item count, to show you right here. So this is the cart items, all these three, and then the total 137, and the item count 3 right there. And once we have all of them, now the rest is pretty simple. It's I'm calling in that page and content to give us structure. These are the layout items, and in here using Bootstrap I'm just giving it 2 columns, like one is 8 and one is 4, and under the 8 column set I am bringing in the cart item and giving it the props. I'm using the key as the item ID as a key, and the item, and basically item is when I'm looping through the cart items, the three items you have seen here. So I'm looping through them here and giving the cart item a prop of one single product at a time. And I'm also giving it the functions add more, add less, and remove product from right here, which are coming from context, and action is being performed by cart reducer as we discussed before. And in here, in the smaller block, I'm just giving it the total and item count and clear cart function, basically just to perform these things, right? So now we're gonna just have a quick look at the cart item. In here, nothing much going on. Only extra thing I'm bringing in is this BS trash, which is a React icon, and this is a great little library that you need to check up on. The React icons, they give you all the documentation and all the icons you will ever need as React components, right? This is really great. Please discover it on your own furthermore. And then when we start the cart item, we're getting the props right here, and from the item we are just pulling the basically deconstructing it and getting the name, quantity, and price. And as you know, all these are nothing but WooCommerce products, so they will have the name, price, everything, all the necessary data points you need. So once we have them, we have no problem setting them up, dot price, the price, quantity, and all that. And when it comes to that plus icon, we're using the add more from that context. And also we're checking up on the quantity. If the quantity is 1, then we keep it at the trash can icon, because from 1 we can just delete it. But when the quantity number goes up, we bring in this plus button, right? As you can see here, trash is here because quantity 1, plus, and then it goes up, and then minus reduces it, right? So that's what's happening right here. And in the end, we're default exporting the cart item. And here in the cart page, we're bringing it in right here, cart item. And next would be cart total, which is even simpler. And this one is bringing pretty much the regular stuff. And one extra thing is bringing is the link from React Router DOM, because we are linking it to the checkout page right here. The checkout page button, right? This one goes to checkout page, and the clear button is just calling in that clear cart. As we saw in the context and the reducer, it just clears everything. And here's the total cost, the total bringing in from the cart page as a prop. And only extra thing I'm doing here is I'm using a toFixed function to control the 2 decimal points, right? I mean, in here, the item 0.00, controlling it to stay 200. If I didn't, sometimes when there is a fraction, it goes all the way, almost like hundreds of zeros, right? So that to fix that, I'm using getting that variable total dot toFixed and setting it to 2 decimal items. And that's that. This basically gives us the whole cart page and its functionality, including the cart context, and the cart reducer. The whole 9 yards. And next, we're going to cover the checkout page and its Stripe integration. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please smash the like button and the subscribe button. This will help me bring more free contents like this to you every week. Thanks again.